Over the past years, finance has typically looked at how things looked over the past month this year compared to last year, and that's what we've generally focused on. We're now adding to that a little bit more emphasis in looking at trends of multiple months. So you're going to see two sets of numbers. This one is for the first 8 months of this calendar year, January through August, 2019 compared to 2018. Our understanding of the finances is kind of complicated by the fact that January to July of this year was a 6-month bridge period, and that helped us bridge the difference between a calendar year in 1918 and our new summer to summer fiscal year in 2019 and 2020. So the highlights of this, if you look at the pledges and loose offerings, now this again is giving. In the 8 months closing August 31st of this year, we were slightly above last year. Not significantly, but at least the trend is upward. There were pledges and prepaid gifts from the prior year. In 2018, there were about 90,000 plus, and in 2019, there were 53,000. Now that's a fixed amount because it goes back to the beginning of that period, January. We won't see another January till next year. This year, in 2019, we had a significant one-time gift to operations. Last but not least, in terms of giving, we have kindred support from the conference. Now, there's a big difference between last year and this year for a very simple reason. Last year, 2018, we had 2 months worth of giving to kindred, July and August. This year, we've had 8 months of giving to kindred from the conference, consisting of, 8 months, so it's almost 46,000. When you look at total giving to operations this year, we're way ahead of last year by 100,000, largely due to the one-time gifts to operations, obviously. There are fewer giving units between 2018 and 2019, but that's kind of a little bit noise in the system because it's, 2%, I believe. All right, the next slide looks at where we are in the current fiscal year. That's the first 2 months, July and August, 2018 versus 2019. Pledges and loose offering, it was 205.6 thousand last year, 189,000 this year. When you first look at it, it doesn't look good, but when you look, it's about 1.5% decrease, or $15,000, which is not much when you consider our entire budget of close to 1.5 million. And also, it's summertime, and there's a lot of variance in giving over the summer based on who's here, how many people come, and all of those factors. And so that type of variation in the summer months is not anything that we are worried about. The next slide is the operating expenses. That's factor number 2. And we have non-staffing expense, staffing costs, total expense, but it's important to note that these expenses do not include apportionment payments and mission expenditures. They're excluded because there are large ticket items that are paid on a different schedule each year. So to try to compare apples with oranges, or compare apples to apples rather than apples to oranges, we've left these numbers out. Bottom line, we're holding expenses. We're keeping them down, including staffing. We're doing it. Mike and the staff are doing a great job. The next slide is one that I think we should be proud of. The banking status, assets and debits. Compared to last year, just taking a snapshot, August 31st, 18 versus 19. Cash on hand, 97,000 in change, now 215,000 in change. Wow. Receivables, not quite the same, almost 24,000 last year, and a little over 14,000 this year, but that means that someone else is holding less of our money that they owe us. This is mostly, I believe, tax receipts that we're looking for. But here's a biggie, our bank loan. We've gone from 132,000 to 105,000, which is, we've eaten 30% of that, or brought it down. The fourth line is our line of credit. We have a line of credit with the bank that we have used to finance some of our ongoing operations. At this time last year, we had $100,000 that we owed the bank on our line of credit. We got 0 now. So we basically, we've done a really good job there. The takeaways. This year, our finances are healthier than they were this time last year. And guess what? We did not have a heavy campaign effort last year. But despite that, we're doing very well due to y'all's generosity. We've had a consistency in giving 2018 to 2019 without that campaign. Our operational expenses are controlled, and we've been keeping staffing costs constant this year, considering extended plans that we're looking at for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I expect some folks may have some questions, but let me suggest that since this is being recorded and live streamed, please hold your questions until the end of the presentations, and then we'll pass around mics to take questions. So next we'll have Jim Buterball, who's going to talk to us about the master facility plan study underway.
Thank you, Adam. So you guys may remember, for those of you who were here for the last town hall meeting, we talked about hiring an architectural firm that would do a long-range facility master plan. And the reason for that was we really haven't had any major work done on the building in quite some time. At our last trustees meeting, we talked about the education wing was done in the 1960s. And so there hasn't really been a lot done there. There has been some renovation here to the sanctuary. In addition to that, we have partnerships with Wesley that we would like to grow, and we have partnerships with the Scouts that we would like to maintain and grow, and their various needs there, as well as wish lists that are brought up from time to time. So instead of doing something piecemeal, we decided to get professionals in here and have them give us ideas on how we can support our ministries better and what we can do with the building. So we hired Jackson and Ryan, and they've been gathering information over the past several months to track how the facility is being used, and their promise is to have a facility plan to us by December that would have some visions on what we could do with the building to enhance how we use it, and not only the building here, but what could be done on the Umstead property that we've now owned for 6 years, at least 6 years, and it's doing a wonderful job having a community garden, but there are a lot more opportunities for that property as well. So what's Jackson and Ryan been doing since we hired them? First thing that they did is basic architectural work. So when architects are going to have to do something on a building, first thing they have to do is they have to find out what the restrictions are. So they had to go into the zoning rules, and they had to go into code restrictions and determine what we could do on this property and what we could do on Umstead property. The good news is, from a zoning standpoint, we can do pretty much anything on this property in terms of what we would want for worship type buildings. And also on Umstead property, there are more restrictions on clearing things, clearing property and everything, but the type of buildings that we would probably want are allowed on that property as well. So we're encouraged by that. Also, I don't know how many of you have heard about the UNC long-range plan that was just published a couple months ago, but Jackson and Ryan has also looked at that plan and how the properties right around us are influenced in that plan. And I don't know if you guys realize this or not, but there is a big plan for right next to us with a 190,000 square foot building that would be four stories high, which could potentially take some parking away because it could remove some of this parking out here. So Jackson and Ryan is looking at UNC's plans and weighing that into what we're going, what we might want to do, and also planning on having conversations with them to talk about how we might work together to deal with some of the challenges that all of us have, i.e. parking, right? All right, and then parking is definitely something that is key on their mind. So the next step is there's been some information gathering. There was a representative from Jackson and Ryan here last week that experienced a whole Sunday here at the church. He sat through worship services, including Kindred, and saw how the Sunday school operates and saw how everything happens on a Sunday here to recognize what's going on. They've also interviewed the staff to determine what obstacles there may be. And then there was a survey that was sent out to all the congregation. All of us had the opportunity to answer the survey. And it's funny, I was talking with somebody today, and they go, that survey was completely different from what I expected. I thought there was going to be a survey asking me specifically about bathrooms and rooms and this and that. And I thought it was going to be just a totally facility survey, but there were questions about ministry. And why were there questions about ministry? And so I had to say, well, Jackson and Ryan wanted to have a feel for what the congregation valued in the ministry, so we could design the building to support that. So they took all the information that they've gotten from experiencing us and talking to staff and hearing from the congregation, and there were a few takeaways. So some of the major takeaways was, in the survey, the highest ranking responses in terms of what do people wanted from the building was they wanted it to be, our congregation said we wanted our building to be welcoming, more welcoming than it is now, and also more connecting, particularly ability to connect among all age groups. And, you know, we love our building, but there are many obstacles toward welcoming with our building the way that it's currently laid out. And so Jackson and Ryan recognize that, and they want to plan on how to improve that. And then the primary needs, facility needs that were recognized was, at the very top, improved fellowship space. And let's face it, right now our fellowship hall is about as far away as you can get from the sanctuary. It's not the most aesthetically appealing place. We have some drainage issues that we deal with, that there's major work that would have to be done to prevent that. So we need better fellowship space, clear and simple. Everybody in any survey is going to say we need better parking options, and that's going to take a lot of creativity to figure that, and maybe partnership with UNC. Another thing that was lifted up as being needed was more small group rooms, especially those suitable for youth and college-age students. And Wesley, the Wesley group does want to partner with us to come into the building instead of being across the street. And for that, we need small group meeting rooms, and those that maybe don't have furniture from the 1960s, but furniture that are more relevant to the times and more comfortable, and maybe better connectivity for for online type work. And so that's something that we need. But it's not just for Wesley. You know, we'd love to do it for Wesley, but our youth group, there's big visions for our youth group, and we're really blessed to have Charlie Baber in here now and his passion, and we can see the potential growth for that. And the same rooms would be suitable for our youth groups. And our Sunday school classes are growing, and now we have, 4 Sunday school classes? 5 Sunday school classes in Hyde Hall. So small group meeting space is really needed. And then better alternative worship space, and we have both Kindred and Wesley doing alternative worship services in here now. And as we continue in the future, we're hopeful that Kindred continues to thrive and continues to grow, but there may be additional opportunities for planting churches, and more than likely, it's not going to be, the initial worship is not going to work in here. And so other alternative worship spaces would be good. And then also, it was noted in our meeting with Jackson and Ryan that our choir practice space is awful. And we have a great music program, and we don't support that with the practice space. So then the other part of this is Umstead property. And on Umstead property, they did determine that property would be suited for a multi-purpose building. And there are all kinds of things that could be done there. You know, we have the preschool here now. It could very well be better suited if the preschool continues long range at the Umstead property. Use that during the day, but then at night you have scouts, you have committee meetings, and I don't know how many of you serve on committees, but it's always a race for parking spaces here in the evenings, and as well as alternative worship space could be there. And there could even be some recreational opportunities there. And there are churches that have multi-use buildings that, you know, you can put down basketball goals, you could have yoga rooms, you could have fitness rooms, but then pull that up and have an alternative worship service on Sunday or on a Saturday evening or whenever. And then also in the evenings you have rooms for Bible studies or whatever. So there are all kinds of things that could be done with a multi-use building at Umstead. So the next steps the first focus is going to be here rather than Umstead. And the focus is going to look at what do we do here to make this more connectional and more welcoming. You know, and one thing is you could say, let's just tear down that wing over there and start from scratch. And that is the most expensive way to go. But of course, if you did that and you had a blank slate, then you could really do some cool stuff. So you're going to weigh cost versus having something that's awesome, the most awesome you could get. And then other things that they discussed, though, was we do have room going toward Franklin Street. And I walked out there and looked at this. And if you go from the edge of the Rose Garden and you go forward about 50 feet, and you go from the edge of the sanctuary here all the way over to the education building, there is area that could, they could envision a fellowship hall there, or a connecting area there, a welcoming area in there, and we could have an O-shaped building instead of a U-shaped building. It could be just modifying the education wing over there, but they're going to come back. I don't know what they're going to come back with, and they're architects and I'm not. And so I expect them to be very creative, but they're going to come back with renovation plans versus demolition rebuild plans versus new building, totally new building plan perhaps, to show us with pictures and maybe models showing us what all this stuff could look like. So it's going to be exciting to see, and they will come back with what a multi-purpose building could look like out at Umstead. So stay tuned, and come December, we're expecting, and we expect the folks from Jackson Ryan to come in and present some of their visions, but there will be an opportunity for us to see what they think we can do with our buildings. And getting there, nothing but us chipping in a capital campaign to make it happen, and we'll see what that price tag may be. I think that's it. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh wait, I did want to make one other statement.
Okay.
In case you're concerned, with the initial plans, very limited changes are envisioned for the sanctuary. So don't get nervous about the sanctuary. If anything's done here, it would be minor. We're really thinking about outside.
That's right. No one's adding screens or anything right now. I have suggested that it would be lovely to have AC in the chancel. I mean, you know, just as a guy who heats up a bit, it would be lovely for y'all not to have to see me dab myself during Sunday mornings. I want to lift up just a couple things here. So one, as we move into mid-fall, we're about to get into our generosity season. And so you'll be receiving email messages, and we'll be in the bulletin, things like that, about generosity roundtables. So this is an opportunity to come together to learn about our different approach to stewardship. We're talking about generosity now rather than stewardship. We have a generosity team rather than a stewardship team, really focused on the spiritual aspects of giving here at the church. And so be looking out for those generosity roundtable opportunities. Sign up for one. There will be 3 different opportunities. And if you don't make it to one of those, it's okay. There'll be more information on social media than there has been before about generosity. We've got a great sermon series that's kicking off on October the 20th, where we'll be hearing updates each and every Sunday about generosity and how we're thinking about generosity, all culminating towards our Pledge Sunday, which will be November the 15th, I think it is, that Sunday. So here are our roundtable dates: Saturday, October 12th from 9 to 11:30. Sunday, October 20th from 12:30 to 3, and then Tuesday, October 29th from 6:30 to 9. So 3 different opportunities, different days of the week, different times of the week. David Olilla, who is our generosity team chair, and myself will be talking primarily at these occasions. And so hope you can make it. We've got a great generosity team. Some of the folks from the generosity team are present here this afternoon. I think it's going to be an exciting season for us. So please come to one of our roundtable dates if you can. And if not, we'll have other information available in worship and on social media and in other ways. And so that's a plug for generosity. I do think that it's important every time I come up here during the next several months, actually, is to give any relevant updates around denominational issues as well. And so I don't have a tremendous amount, but we've got a general conference coming up this spring in Minneapolis in May. And we've just crossed the threshold where legislation is due to the general conference. And so all of that has been mailed in, and we'll be getting more detail around this legislation here in the coming months. There are plans or legislative adjustments that I know have been submitted by, you might say, traditionalists and progressives. Some are modifications to the existing traditional plan. Some are, or I should say the upcoming traditional plan. Some are modifications to the one church plan. Folks are going to just take that thing around as many times as they can to see if it'll pass. There are two others, however, that currently I think hold most promise. If you email me, I'm glad to email you everything that I have about these two plans that I'll mention. One is called the Bard-Jones Plan, named after the bishops who authored it. And then another is named the Indianapolis Plan. The Indianapolis Plan, there's a group of traditionalists, centrists, and progressives who've been gathering and arm wrestling around a way to articulate a way forward for everyone. Now, both the Bard-Jones Plan and the Indianapolis Plan are trying to maintain a larger umbrella of the church while creating distinctive bodies within that umbrella. They come at it from slightly different approaches. However, I am optimistic that one of these two plans might actually have a chance of passing at General Conference if we can be focused enough to pass anything at General Conference. But what I'm enjoying seeing in that is a willingness of folks who would typically say they're in different camps in the life of the church, trying to work together to create solutions that don't splinter the church in such a way that there's just not much left after the splintering. And so I am hopeful in that. I also do become slightly concerned when we have so many different plans, because it's General Conference is a 2-week experience, and the first week you work on legislation, and you break, for any given plan, you break legislation up into multiple groups. So you might focus on only things that have to do with faith and order, and only things that have to do with administration, and only things that have to do with finance, and only things that, so you break things up into different areas, and then folks work on all of that, and you don't know what it'll like when they come back together again in the second week. And so the more you have of that, sometimes the more difficult it is for things to cohese into the second week when you're trying to actually vote on it. But we're going to pray that the Spirit works among us, and that some good for the multiple camps and Methodism will come of the conference. But again, Indianapolis plan and the Bard Jones plan. So you can Google those, and I think you'll find some information on those, but you can certainly email me, and I'll email you any information that I have on those plans. All right, thank you. So Adam, do you want to be the MC of the Q&A that you... Oh, yes, yeah, come on.
Thank you, Justin. My assistant is handing out copies of the statement that was adopted by Church Council earlier this summer. And for those who may be watching online or watching a recording, this was statement, a link to it was circulated in the Thursday email newsletter that was sent out on September 5th. And at some point we'll have a copy link posted on the website, but I checked, it's not there at the moment. But you can go back and look at the September 5th email, and there's a link there to it as well. So Justin has given you the graduate level seminar of current developments, and I'm going to go back to the history of 2019, the undergraduate level short course here. At the past year, at the denominational level, of course, everyone's familiar with the special session of the General Conference that passed the traditional plan in February. And the traditional plan, if you got into the details of it, was a collection of several petitions, but the core of it was to have a ban on same-sex marriage in the church and to bar the ordination of, quote, self-avowed practicing homosexuals with enhanced penalties and enforcement as part of that plan, and to become effective in January of 2020. That plan was reviewed by the Judicial Council of the United Methodist Church in April, and the essential elements of it were upheld as being consistent with the Methodist Constitution. There was then a gathering in May in Kansas City that Pastor Justin attended of a group of what might be best described as more progressive elements of the Methodist Church, and referred to themselves as UMC Next. If you're interested in knowing more about UMC Next, there's a website, umcnext.com, that you can go to read about UMC Next. That gathering focused on plans to reform the United Methodist Church, or possibly to form a new Methodism. And in the course of their work, they developed a statement of principles that they encourage people to consider reflecting upon and affirming. So we looked at that, and there had been discussions at the church council meetings in March and in April about what should we be doing and what kind of statements should we be making in response to this development at the denominational level. There was a survey that was undertaken in April that you'll recall, and it asked about the two specific elements of the traditional plan, that is the same-sex marriage and the ordination prohibitions. And it also asked about whether we should become a reconciling church, which had to do with taking a public stance that we would be more inclusive and encourage full participation in the church of everyone. And there was a diverse spectrum of views that were provided there, but a substantial majority were on the progressive end of that, saying that yes, definitely, we should be, what the traditional plan did, in essence, was the wrong tack to take. We also, in church council over the course of the summer, continued the discussion about signage. There was a strong sense that we needed to make a public, as in street level, statement about where we are, at least as a council. And we asked the staff and clergy to suggest what we might do in that regard. And in June, there was a proposal to put up a sign, something like what we have today. And the church council approved it and asked the staff to move forward with implementing that. And we have such a creative staff. I hope you've seen and noticed the sign out front. If not, please open your eyes when you walk out. That God's doors are open to all. And that's been well received. I've heard not a single complaint about it, nothing but people being grateful that we did that as a church. So I'm glad that that went over so well. Church Council also continued to discuss what we should do in the form of a statement as an additional step. And so we circulated after some internal, you know how it is going through drafts of statements and the like with a group. We finally settled upon a statement that was drawn upon the UMC Next commitments that you'll find on the UMC Next website. Although we weren't endorsing UMC Next or saying we're part of UMC Next, we're just drawing upon the statement of principles that they had developed in the course of their work, because it was very direct to the point of what we wanted to say. So in this statement, which you have, should have a copy of, the preamble is focused on, we want to be Methodists who work toward carrying out our commission as disciples of Christ to transform people into discipleship and transform the world. We make this as a statement that is members of the council. This expresses our views, and that's what the preamble says. And that we affirm through this statement 4 different commitments. The first commitment is really a reaffirmation that, hey, we're of the Wesleyan vision. We subscribe to the Wesleyan vision of Methodism. And if you read through this statement, commitment number 1, you'll see that in being passionate followers of Christ, we want to be anchored in the quadrilateral, of course, Scripture, as informed by tradition and experience and reason, and as we live a life of what's referred to here as personal piety and social holiness, but think of it as personal devotion and being disciples in the greater communities, which we all have relations to each other. And commitment 2 reaffirms in part our baptismal vows. We commit to resist evil, injustice, and oppression. You'll remember your baptismal vow is that you accept the freedom and power that God gives us to resist evil, injustice, and oppression. And we can't just accept that power without doing something with it, can we now? So what this commitment says is that we will use that to resist evil, injustice, and oppression in all forms, and to build a church that affirms the full participation. And the key there is full participation. There won't be some can do this and some can do that. It's full participation of all ages, nations, races, classes, cultures, gender identities, sexual orientations, and abilities. Then in commitment 3, we got more specific. Commitment 3 is that we reject the traditional plan. It was the wrong tack to take. And we believe it's inconsistent with the Scripture and the gospel of Christ, and we will resist its implementation. Now, I'm sure you're questioning, well, what does resist its implementation mean? And I'll let you ponder on that. What does it mean? That could mean different things to different people. We agreed upon the word. I don't know that we agreed upon the interpretation, but the word is there. But I would suggest that it includes at least supporting change within the United Methodist Church to try to change what was affected through the traditional plan and what was not done in the form of repealing oppressive language from the discipline. So in commitment 4, you could view this as an interpretation of resistance, I suppose. In commitment 4, we say we will work to eliminate the discriminatory language and the restrictions and penalties in the discipline regarding LGBTQ persons. Now, someone raised a question, well, does that include IA? Does that include plus? It's intended to be everybody. All letters, all variations, everybody. So that much is clear, I think. And we affirm through commitment 4 the sacred worth of that community as well, and want to participate fully with them in ministry. So those are the 4 commitments. At the end of the statement, you see an invitation. We recognize that not everyone in the church, in our church, some of our friends and neighbors in our church community don't agree with this. There was not 100% in column 5 on that survey. There were some at the other end of the spectrum. And that's understandable. People are different. People have different views. So we realize that there may need to be an ongoing, or does need to be an ongoing dialogue, conversation. We need to be open with each other and share our thoughts and views and have discussions about this. And hopefully that's where we'll go. So we're inviting folks to participate in the congregation's conversations about these topics. Now, in the year to come, you've already gotten the preview of that from Justin, so there's not much to add. I'm not sure whether there is a proposal that UMC Next came out with in August of this year, and I have copies, if anyone likes them, I have a few copies of the press release they issued in August up here that you're welcome to take, that talk about their proposal. I'm not sure whether that's the Bard proposal or the Indiana proposal or some combination or something different, a third proposal. One of the many. One of the many. But what it suggests is that, and the Church Council has not discussed this, so this is a new development, that at the 2020 quadrennial conference next May in Minneapolis, that there will be petitions to change the discipline, to remove all the offensive language, to put a moratorium on any penalties for enforcement, and to set a path to allow more local determination of how pastors and annual conferences may proceed, and possibly give some room for self-determination and folks to get some resources and go off and form new expressions of Methodism, but within the umbrella of the United Methodist Church or separate from it. So in any event, the details are out there on the website if you're interested, and as I mentioned, I have copies of the press release up here. Not an endorsement of their proposal, but what this says between the Bard proposal and the UMC Next proposal and the Indiana proposal, or I'm sure the many other proposals out there, is that you're going to see this continue to be a topic for discussion over the next several years, at least the next year, 2, 3, or more. And I'm hoping and praying that we'll all work together so we can continue to all be Methodist in one form or another. So that's all I have to say. Justin, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, a couple things. So Adam referenced the doors that are out here, and I think, again, God's doors are open to all, and all means all. The doors are rainbow colored, yet when we talk about all, we think about the broad scope of folks who are in the life of our congregation and the folks who are in the life of our community. Every single day that I'm on Franklin Street walking around, I see at least one set of people pause to look at the doors. Most days I see someone ask for someone to take a picture with them standing in between the doors. One of the most recent was a former associate of our church, Suzanne Dornsmith, who happened to be passing through town incognito, except they took pictures everywhere. And so I knew she was here. And there's a picture of her between the doors. And so it's really cool to see just how many people are taking note. On Saturday before the game, the boys and I were around, and it was lovely to see just how many people stopped and looked at those doors and took it in. Also, when you think about Instagram and people who are not related to our church, either tagging University United Methodist Church or something like that on Instagram, just how many people just happen to be in town, see those and say, this is great. Enough said, and I love that. We had a woman come into the office a few weeks ago who said that she'd left church years and years and years ago after she came out, and she hadn't been in a church in very many years, so came in after seeing the doors and hugged everyone in our office staff downstairs because it was so meaningful to her. So, hey, that's not bad. This is not bad when someone who's been away from the church for years decides this is the church that's safe to step foot in for a few minutes out of her day. So good things there. All right, let's take a few questions before we wrap up. Yeah. Let me try to get it.
One of the neat things about our church now is the giving garden, and it's something we talk about and are proud of. And and the architects may overlook that. They may not, but there are certainly landscape architects, and they could figure out a way to enhance that and make it something that we can pay attention to and do other things that one might want to do.
Yeah, well, we've got a protective measure in that the chief champion of the Giving Garden is somewhat related to the chair of trustees, who is also, so I think the Giving Garden has some good protection there. So these architects worked on a garden, a similar garden in Houston. So there is at the campus that I served in Houston, there is a large garden, a few years older than ours, was similar kinds of functions, fed into food pantries and other ministries. And so they lifted the garden up, essentially relocated it on site. They said, there's always going to be a little bit of a loss in production after the year one, but it was wonderfully done, and it looks a heck of a lot better than the first one that I helped to install. Go figure. But it just shows that that can be done, and they are looking at it. They do realize the value that we have in the garden, and so we're not gonna let that go.
I have one question. That area out there that,
Pick it up, yeah.
that is a parking lot, we do not own it, or we do? We don't own
We
it.
don't. It would be lovely.
Yeah.
If we
Well,
did.
how many times have we asked the university to let us buy that? And how much would they cost?
Mike is sitting here. So it would. Was that part of ours that we used to have many years ago? Yeah. So we did actually have a track of this that we gave the university on a handshake for use of essentially utilities for less than a decade or so, many years ago. The university is quite tied to that asset now. However, we do the outcome that I think would be best is that in our conversations with the university that we have requested, along with the architect, that we could work together on parking solutions adjacent to us. And that might be a way of helping us and the university. For instance, the last time I was involved in a church-based capital campaign, we likewise had some significant parking issues. Again, downtown church, so on and so forth, restricted as far as land. And we partnered with the large private school that was near us to co-build a parking garage that allowed us dedicated space during the weekday and full use on Sundays. And it's marvelous because you don't have to pay for the whole thing, and you still have as much usage as you really want, and the school benefits from it greatly as well. I would love it if that could happen here, but we'll have to see what those conversations and negotiations hold. But if you know anyone at UNC who's involved in master planning process and building, just tell them to talk to their best friends, University United Methodist Church.
Thank you.
That was great.
Oh, and
Great
what's
question.
the square footage right out there that is not built on?
Oh my goodness, I don't even know if we. Well, just even in the front portion of the. So the courtyard. See, this courtyard, we would not, even in any construction, we would try to disturb this courtyard very minimally because it's also a memorial garden. So we'd be thinking
right.
about things forward of the court. So this would become an atrium. Now a courtyard, it would become an atrium if it's enclosed, and then we'd be thinking about things moving in front of the garden, in front of the education building.
So you're not thinking about making that part of this entrance?
No, this would remain open right here. Great question.
Another question back
Well, we're just using the microphone so that because we're recording it, that way it picks up on
Because I
line
have a
as
big
well.
voice. I'd like to thank all the leaders for getting everything together today. I think they did a great job, Jan, everybody. So I have 2 or 3 questions. Number one is our giving units over the year going up or down? Years, let's go back 5 years. Giving dollars per unit going up or down? And then the other thing, if you look at the big picture, is that I know it was mentioned that we would do something on campus first, but it seems like the opposite would, if we did something on Umstead first and get the pressure off this campus so things can get built, should also be considered at the same time.
Right. Yeah. So I'll start there and work my way back, and Mike will help me on the units and things with the longer year history. So, you know, in what we're trying to do is think about both this site and the Umstead site together. So, because we have partners that have great interests, so both UNC Wesley and the Boy Scouts would like to be partners in some phase of construction in phase 1. So like when you have a master plan, you look at all the things that you could do. And you're likely not going to be able to do all of them in one fell swoop. And so you do them over a staged 2 or 3 or 4 different iterations. In iteration number 1, the Scouts and the Wesley would love to be a part of that and would love to invest in that. And so we do hope that there would be something available for on both sites. Now we could think about timing even of that phase 1, and so maybe you do need to complete something at Umstead before you do interior renovations here. Maybe you're doing something on Umstead and building a new structure in front of existing structures, which would then enable us to continue to use what we have and then move into that and then come back and renovate. So there are multiple options that the architects will help us think through, but with the intent of being responsive to some of our phase 1, what I'm calling our phase 1 partners, if possible. All right, Mike, you have answers on giving units across 5 years, I think, just from what you have in your head, because you remember it all.
Yes, and as you saw the numbers up there, year to date we're down what we would call 9 giving units, and that's people that are regularly associated with the church giving money on a regular basis, which I think is a fantastic number since, again, we did not stress a financial campaign this past in 2018, and we still have a few people that are confused by our bridge period. So they might not have given anything yet. So giving has not actually changed unit-wise in the past 5 years. It's been very stagnant, around 400 identified givers on a regular basis. The one thing that has changed is that our giving per individual has tended to be like the economy, going up 3 to 4% a year. Probably the most significant change has been some of our newer members who are actively involved are giving significantly more than has traditionally happened in the 5 years prior to that, which is interesting. It's not something that we've done anything about. It just seems that we've connected them better and their giving is up.
That said, we are going to by no means remain complacent around giving. We do believe that there's opportunity for increased generosity all across the church, and we want to be paying attention to new members as they come in and having conversations around generosity there. I think it is a very good or an exciting indicator that there are newer members who are giving at a slightly elevated level. So that's good. We hope for more of the same as we continue forward. So we've got this is 3 or 4 minutes left here, so we'll try to get as many questions in as we can.
So I have a question about missions. So my understanding is all of our major missions are not supported through the budget. And so as a result of that, in addition to the generosity campaign, we have to have individual campaigns during the year. Is there any concern about campaign fatigue? And if there is, are there any plans to address that?
So this is one of those things in the life of the church that folks go back and forth around and have some different theories about. So, every church that I've been to and have talked to different friends in their churches, have some level of giving that happens towards a missional kind of activity, if you create the broad definition of missional activities in the life of the church. And most of those also do exactly what we're doing, have these kinds of asks, because the theory there is that there is a different emotional connection that people have to giving towards special activities, even activities that you do all the time, rather than giving to the budget kind of normally. So people feel inspired by, let's talk about table here. So we're going to spend extra emphasis. And then people say, oh yeah, I'm excited about that. I want to give to that. So there is that theory. And so some people say, do as much of that kind of giving as you can. And some have said that younger generations do more of that. So think about how, for those of you who spend time on Facebook and things like that, think about how many GoFundMe kinds of campaigns that someone will say because it's their birthday or something. They want you to give to something that they care about. It's a thing that seems to be done. However, there are other folks who say the exact opposite. That the best thing to do is to say, look, y'all got to stop just giving to the thing that you like to give to and be committed to the overall enterprise and give generously to one kind of fund for the overall enterprise. And so we... And what we've done oftentimes here is we've told the congregation, here's a budgetary level that is going to cover regular, mostly internal operational expenses. And that's the budget. And, I would be happy to increase the budget by $400,000, and all of those $400,000 go towards missional opportunities. I mean, that's not going to make me, but Mike is going, I don't know if it'll happen, buddy. But it's not been the way that we have typically behaved. However, again, in this generosity process, we're hoping to think about some of our behaviors around giving differently, see if that gives us a different result, and then we'll see what we might bake things in differently. I still do think that in some way or another, it's inspirational for people to hear about these different programs and feel inspired in the moment to give to them. I think, though, as an objective, we want to continue to increase our giving and our focus towards missional endeavors. And so I can't tell you exactly which way it's going to go, but it's something that we continue to think about. I mean, I think it's important to everybody here. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, this will be quick. I just wanted to ask, have the architects been strongly encouraged to consider solar panels and other environmentally sound things? I'd
Yes.
love for, if we build a new building, for it to be LEED certified or something like that.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to answer this as quickly as I can. So, yes, they have already heard that. That's one of the things we said to them early on. And here's something that I didn't know. So, LEED certification was created years ago in order to raise the level. So, the folks who were advocates of LEED certification, their goal was to say, we want to build here, and the building industry is building here. And we want to encourage them by these standards. We want to encourage the standards of the overall industry to change. And in fact, that did. And so building standards are normatively greener than they used to be. And so now LEED certification has actually gone up another rung. And so what the architects said was they were going to suggest as green a building as possible, because it's important and it's valuable to us, but it's also valuable to them as architects, and I think valuable for the industry. And so the question is, with raised level of certifications, what we feel like we might be willing to do to flex up toward that. But they're already thinking about, solar panels and things like that, and heard that feedback from the congregation. So we'll keep it going, because again, this is something that we value as a church community, as well as just the general value to construction and society. Yep. Right. Yeah, it's really cool, and you can do that there. We are not, our building is not positioned at the appropriate angle to be the greenest. Sorry, can't do anything about that right now, but they're still thinking about all those things. Well, thank you all. This has been a great session. Again, this will be available online so you can share with your friends. Go in peace.